Hello. In this brief video, I'll be introducing the goji.ledge parameter file that was distributed with the original version of GRange. There is a similar file, a similar purpose for these files in each of the LRange family of tools, whether it's AFRange or LRange or GRange. There's going to be a file like this, although it may be called something different. These files provide the legend for a corresponding spatial layer. And so there is a spatial layer in the layers folder that breaks the world into land cover types. So I've spoken of two main ways to divide the area of interest, in this case the whole globe, into sections. There's a spatial map that divides the world into landscape units. So that map is kind of doing a big job. It's defining where the different areas that are sufficiently homogeneous for the parameter set provided for them to represent plant growth and such within that area. That's not what we're talking about here. Here it's a much simpler affair. Here we're talking of a land cover map provided in the layers folder and a corresponding legend, and that's the goji.ledge file. Again, there can be something similar but named differently in other tools. Here then, what this tool allows, this file allows, is for different land cover types to be turned on and off when doing simulations. So even within a landscape unit, there can be areas that you want to simulate and areas that you don't want to simulate. So within some large area that's grassland, for example, perhaps there are small incursions that are urban areas or snowfields or what have you, and you want the ability to turn those on and off. I wanted a detailed source for the map that informs GRange. And so I used a product that's very popular. It's from Loveland et al. 2000 from the International Journal of Remote Sensing, and is at 1 kilometer resolution, and as I say, a highly detailed classification. I can't quite zoom in on this map. It's from that publication, and it's not high enough quality to support that kind of zoom in, but you can get a sense from the bottom of this figure that there are in fact 99 different land cover types that divide the world into all these land cover classes. And so I put this in place as a grid ASCII file that's imported into GRange. Accompanying that then, we need a parameter file that describes the different land cover classes. And that in this case is the goji.legend file. Now these are actually known as Olson Global Ecosystem Areas. It's from a 1994 paper as cited in that figure. And somewhere along the line, forgotten to me I'm afraid, I've abbreviated Global Ecosystem Legend to Goji, but I don't recall why. But you can see here there are 99 entries. Now, in these parameter files, anything past the double slashes that you see in the center of the screen is a comment, meaning anything to the right of those double slashes isn't read by GRange. And so we have just information on the right. But you can see there are 3 columns that are really providing information that's relevant here. The first column are zeros and ones that turn on and off entries. The second column is really the heart of the matter. It's connecting the numbers that are stored within the grid ASCII GIS layer and the land cover type. So you can see it spans from 1 upward to, in this case, as I say, it stops at 100, which is no data, and there's no entry 99. So we have 99 land cover types here. And so you can see that our first entry is urban. Any ones in that map that's provided to GRange are treated as urban lands. Any twos are treated as low sparse grassland, etc. Now in the first column, that's really where this pathway is flexible. You can change the entries that are simulated by changing an entry in that first column. Here, urban areas are not simulated. They're turned off by putting a 0 in that first column. The second entry, sparse grassland, is turned on, and so you see a 1 in that first column. Again, forests are turned off. Tall grasses and deserts and tundra are turned on. Semi-desert is turned on. Below that we have glacial ice and wet wooded swamps and inland seas and the seawater itself. Those are turned off. And so a user can go in and turn on and off individual elements here. And so, for example, this is set up really to capture rangelands in the way that I defined them in the Boone et al. 2018 product. But a person can enable and disable any entry they like. There's also the possibility, although I typically recommend using GRange L-range for areas smaller than the globe, but still, if for whatever reason you wanted to use GRange to simulate an area, Ethiopia, for example, then you could go in to the land cover map, the GIS layer, and replace all the pixels that are not Ethiopia with 100s. You could replace them with the 100 you see in this legend, and then since that's turned off, those areas would not be simulated. They would just be turned off and not simulated in the GRange program. You can also do this to represent scenarios. Perhaps you're interested in expanding areas of grassland, say, and so you have an area where you incorporate a type of grassland, perhaps the tall grasses and shrubs, who knows, and another where you turn that off. And so you can maintain two of these files, one that has that entry turned on and another where it's turned off. And then that represents a scenario where you can compare the results with the areas turned on and the areas turned off. Now, to make a scenario like that, or to change the file that's used in simulations, we would go to the SimParm file, which is talked about in more detail in another video, but you can see here some early parameters provided affecting the echoing of information, a few more pieces of basic information, and then more information about soils, both topsoil and subsoil. And then as we scroll down, we've got some information on vegetation and tree cover, shrub cover, herb cover. And then here you see near the top of the screen an entry that's labeled split Goji 0.5.ASCII. And that's the spatial layer that I'm talking about. That's the one that provides the Goji classification. And then the next entry, you see Goji.legend. That is the legend file we were just looking at. So perhaps if you wanted to use the same data, the same spatial surface, you would leave that split Goji 0.5 entry alone, but then you could change the Goji.legend file to provide a pointer to the baseline, perhaps the one that's already there, and then the one that you've modified, and then be able to compare the results in a scenario.